Hello, welcome. You're listening to the Saluki Gamescast, the greatest game podcast in the tri-state area. This is episode 27 for October 28th, 2022. Joining me, as always, are OJ Duncan, Ryan Freels, and, well, who's that across the table?
Leave my controller alone.
Guess who's back? Back again.
We're very happy to have Alicia Utecht back. She's back from her journey across the nation updating controllers. She has to do every few months.
You know, I need to be spreading the good word of the podcast, and the best way to do that is to go in and, excuse me, have you heard about our Lord and Savior updated controllers?
We are glad to have Alicia back. She's been gone a couple of weeks and everything.
She got busted like breaking into houses and updating controllers.
She's like a really weird Santa.
Took that Sly Cooper inspiration to a weird direction.
Absolutely.
So, how's everyone doing?
It's that time of the semester.
It's that time of the semester.
I am definitely here.
Well, OJ, you are still working on your, sorry, I'm forgetting the
prelims.
Term, your prelims. And so those are coming up the end of the month, right?
Yeah, so November 7th, actually. Is
November
when they have to
7th.
turn in. So,
okay.
I do want to share my horror story, though, for those listening who may be familiar with prelims. So you have to fit everything exactly for ours into a maximum of 25 pages. You cannot go over 25 pages. It's against the rules. And so I had one of my 3 questions written, and it was exactly 25 pages, like right at the end. It was perfect size. And I felt like I had the bare minimum that I needed to get in to answer that question. And then I double-checked the formatting, and I only had it at 1.5 space instead of double-spaced. And it has to be double-spaced, so it expanded the page to about 30 pages. So now I have to cut 5 pages of stuff that I feel is the bare minimum that I needed in there. And so I was very upset about that.
I always feel like that's harder to do, to trim something down than it is to expand. If I need to fill 2 or 3 more pages, I can do that.
Yeah.
But if it's, trimming it down 5 pages, that's a Herculean task.
Yeah, and I felt I answered everything exactly how it needed to be answered, and so I took a couple days to mourn that and work on my other ones. But today I'm planning on going in there and just cutting things.
Just remember to save that 30 pages as a separate document. That way you have it when you come back working on the dissertation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need you need something like Google Docs where it saves multiple versions and everything, so that you don't have to worry about it. It does it automatically, theoretically.
Or you just save, and every document I save is like V1.0, V1.5, V2.0.
Now, you haven't quite reached the level of a graphic designer yet, where it is image final X, image final X2, image final X2-1.
Image final X2-2 for real this time.
Now you're just naming Elon Musk's children.
Well, if I'm doing graphic design for Twitter, I suppose now I get to name one of his kids.
All my children with Elon Musk.
Oh my gosh.
Alicia, you've been traveling. You're back into Carbondale.
Thank God.
How's it feel to be back in town?
It is good. I went home 2 weekends ago for a funeral, and then last weekend for a wedding. So a lot of whiplash on the emotions there. But, I love flying. I love traveling. I love going home and seeing my parents and my sister and my dogs. I am so happy to have a weekend that I'm just in Carbondale. Not even, I have to catch up on work this weekend because I haven't been able to with everything that I was doing. But even just being able to be like, okay, I can sit in my apartment for more than 12 hours at a time. It's just such a nice feeling.
Yeah, there's something to be said about being able to do nothing every once in a while and not feeling like you're, neglecting something else in the process.
Yeah, and it's I can't really do nothing, but at least I can be in my office or my living room or my kitchen while I'm working rather than having to deal with everyone else around me, Oh, you need to get the dishes done. You need to make dinner. When I live alone, I can just do whatever I need to on my time. If I make dinner at 11 p.m., nobody cares.
Yeah. Hopefully nobody's calling you and checking up on when you're making your dinner. So we are, this is Friday that we're recording this. Monday is Halloween. Any big plans for Halloween from any of you?
Not for Halloween itself, but I'm going to Rocky Horror tonight, midnight show over in Marion, which is like 20 minutes from here, so not too far.
Is that what they're doing at the Culture
At
Center?
the Civic Center, yeah.
All right, cool. Have you been to Rocky Horror shows before?
Yeah, a group of us went last year, and I kind of got to fool everyone into thinking that, so the terminology for it, if you haven't been to a Rocky Horror participatory event, you're a Rocky Horror virgin. And traditionally, they'd take marker and write a V on your forehead. Last year they didn't because, COVID concerns were still a lot higher, but I kind of got to fool the people I went with into thinking that I wasn't a Rocky Horror virgin because I had seen the movie, but I had never actually been to the stage show or seen the movie with the shadow cast. I had just watched the movie at home. So now I get away with never having to be called out as a Rocky Horror virgin because last year I did go and see the stage play and have all the participation.
They do it twice as worse if you skip the first year, right? And you just told everybody.
It's okay. None of them listen to the podcast. They won't know.
Oh,
We won't have the
Alicia.
episode.
Or will they not
I
know?
see this backfiring big time.
We certainly won't get this episode uploaded before midnight tonight.
Justin, you
Yeah,
know
but
what
I'm
you
going to
have to
see
do.
everybody.
I mean, I can actually clip this part specifically and post it to the Kleinow page, maybe.
I'm not going with people from the department, though. I'm going with people who y'all don't know.
Preview, totally random clip.
I have a very large Facebook audience. I'm just,
Yeah, I mean, I can post it to Facebook and tag you.
Instagram
and I know
likes
the people
us.
who do the Rocky Horror. So
I think you said Instagram really likes us, so
Yeah, I mean, we can, there's all sorts of ways. We could send this audio clip to the people at Marion and let them play it before their show begins.
Yeah, good luck with them identifying who I am.
I mean, how many...
Tell you what, if y'all come to Rocky Horror tonight, then you can write a V on my forehead and make fun of me. How about that?
Or a TV, technically virgin. All right. So Halloween, very exciting coming up. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the show. But let's start with what you've been playing. So, Alicia, you've been gone for a while. What have you been playing lately?
Would you believe I have not touched my Switch in 2 weeks?
I mean, traveling, I can believe that.
Yeah.
the updates.
I did try to play it the other day, and one of the controllers wasn't charged, and I just had war flashbacks. No, I think similar to most of us, I've just been playing mobile games. One of my Twitch friends got me hooked on playing 2048, which, if anyone's not familiar, it's basically a grid, and you swipe the numbers, match 2 to 2, and build it up and try to get up to 2048. So I've been playing a lot of that. I think the highest I've gotten so far is 512. So not doing fantastic, but not doing horrible.
Mm-hmm.
That's only 2 away, I mean, technically speaking. So,
Yeah.
all right. So just 2048, nothing else?
I probably opened Pokemon Go. I think I spun a few when I was going through the different airports, but I really haven't been playing a whole lot. I've been so busy with...
Are there a lot of Pokemon at the airports? 'Cause
Oh,
I would
yeah.
think that would be like a prime location because so many different people coming through and everything.
Oh, yeah. They're especially... So I've discovered that I hate the St. Louis airport because you go through security and then that's, you have like A gate or C gate or whatever. You go through security for C gate that's it. You're only in C gate. You cannot get to A gate unless if you go out and go through A gate security.
Right.
Whereas I'm used to the Minneapolis airport where you go through security and then wherever you can get to any of the gates. So the Minneapolis airport especially has a ton of Pokestops, multiple gyms in the airport. So you never manage to hold on to a gym for more than 5 minutes, but
Yeah, that's bad when airports are set up that way, because if you have a long layover, I mean, when I have a long layover, I generally just get up and walk around the airport, and like, especially this one I've never been to before, because I just want to see like, what do they have in this airport?
yeah.
And if you're doing that and you're having to go in and out of security, it's such a just pain to do all that.
Or if like you want to, if they have a McDonald's in the other
Right.
one and you don't have time to go and get food.
Yeah, so you're stuck in the one that only has like the Wendy's, and you're like, ugh, Wendy's. I guess I can eat Wendy's.
Yeah.
All right. So before we move on, Halloween Monday, what are you dressing up as?
It's going to depend a little on the weather. I'm either going to
Maybe
wear...
just ask, do you have a costume? Maybe you want to keep it a surprise. Do you have a costume for Monday?
Sure. I have something costume-ish.
I'm not lying at all.
I have things that are costume-ish. I've never been super big into Halloween, so like
You're going to Rocky Horror and you've never been super into Halloween?
I like all the stuff around Halloween, but Halloween night, like my family was always the family that stayed home and gave out candy. Because when you live in Minnesota, if you're going to get a costume, it's got to be big enough to fit over your jacket because it's going to be cold. Because you can't get through a Halloween with a Minnesotan without hearing about the great Halloween blizzard of 91. Doesn't matter that I wasn't alive for it. I will talk about it. And I will also talk about the fact that 2020 had the same amount of snow because, of course, 2020 had to challenge the great Halloween blizzard of 91.
And you had to go like up in the snow, up the hill, 15 miles to get to work, and then
Uphill both ways.
To get a mini Snickers.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will expect a costume come Monday.
Y'all will see. We have the CMST Halloween.
Yeah. So we will expect you to be there, costume. Like, you can come as a Rocky Horror character.
I'm not quite that fun, but
I mean, there are characters that aren't like, or say less vulgar than others to potentially dress as. You could dress as Meatloaf's character.
Meatloaf again.
Ryan, what have you been playing?
So, first off, I played Tetris as usual lately. I got my highest score in a while, at least. I got, like, I think around 140,000 points. But the big difference that's happened is I finally started Pokemon Go. And
No, the darkness has taken you as well.
I took a while making my character design, and then I selected Charmander because I always select Charmander. Because Charmander's cute and Charizard is awesome, and I mean the other starters are amazing too, but that's my favorite. And so far, I have played with my Charmander, and we are now good friends. I did the AR thing where he was in my office, and I petted him and gave him treats and stuff, and he strangely merged with my desk at one point in some Cronenbergian horror. But
Chari desk.
The desk that burns.
It's the Paldean variant.
Oh god. And I've caught 3 Vulpixes because I love Vulpix, and because I'm kind of I need to get up to date. I've caught Pokemon I don't really recognize, and I've caught a Haunter, and I love me Haunter. So, the song is strangely catchy for when you're walking out in the wild. The boom, 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 boom. And it kind of annoys me, but it is catchy. But I do like the AR element of it. I have wanted to play an AR game, and this is the one that makes the most sense for me since I like Pokemon. And I am going to like exploring out there with this, I think. And I do like the interactivity with the Pokemon. One thing that frustrates me is sometimes the swiping, like on the screen of the iPhone, works better than others, and other times it feels like it works far worse. That's, I think, my main critique about it. But otherwise, it's exactly what it says it delivers. It's exactly what everybody says it is, and I don't think it's ever going to be like my favorite game ever, but it is fun. I can see why it's addictive, and we will see how addictive it becomes for me. I definitely plan on trying to evolve my Charmander into a Charizard, and I think there's like apps or game stuff where you can like get the Pokemon from Pokemon Go into other Pokemon games, right? Like you can put them over.
Yeah, Pokemon Home.
And
directly into Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu.
Okay, I hope maybe I'll introduce some of my Pokemon to Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, and I hope that Pokemon Home thing also works for the new Pokemon games coming up, because I wanna use my Charizard in Pokemon Violet or Scarlet. Sorry.
Yeah. So any Pokemon from any game, essentially, you can move to Home and then bring to the next games.
All right.
Too.
This is gonna be cool then, because even if I don't like all the Pokemon in the new one, which I think they have some cool designs for this, so I don't think that'll be as much a problem, but I'll have some classics I can go back to.
Yeah, I think that's something they finally got right, is what I've heard from a lot of different players, that Home actually works, and it makes it much more convenient for moving Pokemon around to different games across different platforms. So that's very good to hear. All right, so Pokemon Go and Tetris, is that it?
Yep, that's my weekend. my week of games. It's to go along with Alicia. It's that time of the semester. So.
All right, OJ.
Okay, so I've also been playing Pokemon Go, but I'll talk about that in just a minute. So I found this really, really fun game on my phone, and I think it's on other platforms too, but it's called Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion.
What? I've heard of this.
So in the game, it's kind of a Zelda-ish game, and you start out as a turnip, and the very first thing you do is you get a letter, and it says, hey, you have back taxes on your greenhouse that you live in, and you need to pay them. And you have two options, to read and tear it up. So you hit read, and you have to go back. And then your only option is to tear it up. So you tear it up, and then it's like, oh, no, you've committed tax evasion. And so Mayor Onion comes and says, haha, you committed tax evasion, so now I own you, and you have to do all of these things that I ask you to do. And so he asks you to go and do various tasks. And every time you come across anything that says the word tax on it, you just get so angry, and you only have the option to tear it up. And so there's like dozens of documents in the game that you come across. Like you see a receipt from somebody and it says tax on the bottom, and then you just get angry and have to rip it up. And then like you do a task for someone, and they're like, oh, can you give this flower to the person I love? And well, everything is all like fruits and vegetables, right? And a brownie. But so then you
brownies count as vegetables.
Yes, exactly. So you get the flower for this blueberry, I think, and then you give it to the strawberry, and then the strawberry gives you a letter to give back to the blueberry saying, oh, yes, I love you, but it has the word tax in it. So you just rip it up right in front of her, and she's like, oh, that's rude.
I like how calm everyone else is about this.
Yeah. And like someone else gave you like a book or something they're licensed for them to do something, and then but it said tax on it, so you ripped it up. And they're like, oh, well, you got me.
Everybody's just used to Turnip Boy's staunch libertarian views.
Yeah. And then as you go through the game,
Turnip Boy goes to a Jordan Peterson conference.
Title.
That is the final level. So as you go through the game, you start to realize that this used to be a human world, and now it's talking vegetables. And you go through a house, and it has references to 2020 and the like epidemic or pandemic. And then you start finding out more and more about what happened, and it's really kind of dark. for a very lighthearted game, it gets a little bit dark. But as you go through, you get everything you need for Mayor Onion, and you meet a lot of people along the way, and you start creating life at some point, which is very exciting, and things around you just start coming to life. So it's a really fun game. It's short. It starts off free, but after you go through like the first area, it's like you're blocked off, and it's like, hey, you didn't think you'd get away with just not paying any taxes, right? And so I think it was like $5 or so, and well worth the $5. And
That's a clever way to implement that.
Yeah.
It really is.
I can't even be mad about that paywall there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I saw it and I was like, oh yeah, take my money. Like, is it? Because it was fun enough in that first part. And so that was on Android. I don't know if you have to pay up front in any of the other other versions or not.
I might have to try this.
But yeah, it's definitely worth it. It's pretty short too, so it doesn't take up a whole lot of time, and you can just like drop it off and pick it up. And it has elements of Portal. It has elements of Zelda. So it's really, really fun. I really highly recommend everybody play it.
So cute looking.
And that works okay on a phone, because like I have heard of this game. I haven't played it, but I've heard of it on Steam.
Mm-hmm.
And so how did the controls work?
So there were two spaces where the controls were kind of rough for me, but then I realized I was doing something wrong. Because you eventually get something that acts kind of like a portal. Like you can make a portal here and a portal there and then use it to go back. And I forgot that I had that for a second. And so I was trying to do something where I had to get from one area to another really quickly. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't do it. And I was like, these controls suck. But then I was like, oh, wait, no, I have these portals. Never mind. It was my fault. I think it might be a little better than it used to be, because I did see in the comments that some people were saying you should probably have a controller when you're playing this.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't really have that big of a problem. The final boss actually was kind of rough, now that I think about it too. So if you have a controller to play it on, that might be a little better option. But most of the bosses weren't that bad.
That's always my concern with any sort of action game on a phone. Is like, is this going to actually be playable or not? But yeah, I didn't even know that was out on phones.
Yeah,
that sounds good.
Yeah, and it has the general, like you tap anywhere on the left side and then move it, and that moves your character, like control pad type thing.
Right.
Can't wait for the sequel, Turnip Boy versus Cultural Marxism.
Anything else?
I do. I wanted to talk a little bit more about creepy Pokemon. I don't know if you heard from last week, Alicia, but we were talking about the horrible origins and very, very creepy Pokemon. And so
You look at the Pokedex, there's a lot of dark entries.
yeah. So I did a little bit more research on some of them, more than we were talking
OJ was
about.
emotionally scarring us last week.
I was.
It was a good podcast to let your children listen to.
Happy
Mostly
Halloween,
scarred me, then
everybody.
beat me up in the parking lot.
He emotionally, then physically scarred you.
I found the Pokemon in real life and set them upon Ryan.
I didn't know you could
You
do
did
that
get them
with
started
Pokemon.
playing Pokemon Go, so now they're going to have them in their AR.
That's why I have Pokemon Go. I need protection. Damn it.
All right, so we have Sliggoo, who isn't really scary, but Sliggoo secretes acid that slowly digests anything. And it says that Sliggoo has a hard time differentiating between food sources and friends.
Wow.
Yeah, so Sliggoo just like walks up and like starts to like shoot acid on you, and you start to dissolve slowly so it can eat you. We have Gorobus, which is an underwater Pokemon that slowly saps the life source out of things. So it corners you underwater and then slowly slaps your life force out with its needle-like appendages. And then you go to the bottom to feed the other aquatic Pokemon. We have, let's see, Gengar. We talked a little bit about Gengar. But Gengar is again a former human who's looking for a ghost friend to travel with it. So he kills everybody, hoping that eventually one of them will again turn into another Gengar.
Oh, God, sorry.
No, you're
I was
good.
just saying, which would imply then that Ghastly and Haunter are also former humans, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ghastly is probably a baby.
Didn't you watch the anime? We knew that.
Okay, that's true. I remember now.
I did not know that. I didn't know that humans could become Pokemon.
Yes, yeah.
Did you tell them about Yamask?
Yeah, actually, that's what started all of this. Because in Pokemon Go, the research for this Halloween is about Yamask, and that's I was like, well, I didn't realize it was actually their face, like their real human face. We have Frostlass, who is a woman who died in the mountains, and so she freezes people, takes their corpses back to her lair, and then eats their frozen souls. And it says she usually goes after men. So she's kind of a spurned woman with regrets who died in the mountains and froze to death. And now she freezes men and takes them back to her lair and then eats their
She's a
eats their
succubus.
souls. Yeah, essentially.
With ice powers.
So she's
She's cold as ice.
That's the part of Frozen they don't tell you.
Just wait for the third movie. It's coming, folks.
Oh, don't give Disney ideas.
No, they're already releasing a third movie. That was announced. I just ruined your day, I think.
A little bit.
So we have Phantump, there's a lot of Phantumps out right now for the Halloween event. So Phantump screams like a human child in a forest, and when adults come to help them, then it doesn't do anything specifically, but it like leaves it to the other Pokemon to eat. So it lures adults into the forest, and then lets other Pokemon eat them.
That's just a cat. That's what cats do. They like when they meow, they cry like babies. That's like the same pitch and everything as a baby's cry.
So we have I don't know how to say this. Palossand or Palossand?
Palossand.
Palossand. So Palossand, I guess that makes sense because it looks like a big castle. So Palossand is just under the sand, and then it jumps up and grabs people out of the sand, kind of like reverse quicksand is what I'm thinking, and then pulls them under the sand and then eats their souls. So
there's a lot of soul eating in Pokemon.
It really is.
There really is.
It also, like, the Pokemon world sounds like a horrible world to live in. Like, none of this seems like this doesn't get depicted in the cartoon at all, does it?
A lot of this darker stuff was in the Kanto cartoon.
Maybe not quite as grim as you imagine it.
I
When
would
you get
say
into the stuff, but
not as grim, but again, like we knew that the Ghastly line were former humans. You know, we had the Ninetales brainwashing everybody episode.
Yeah,
we had the cooking Farfetch'd and eating it.
But when you take this to its logical conclusion, right? Like the world of Detective Pikachu is just like a horror show. Like this is like the dark universe that you're inhabiting, because there are animals everywhere that aren't just going to kill you, but are going to consume your soul. We don't have those in the real world. So this is a pretty dark universe.
Arceus is a cold and indifferent god and doesn't care about any of their creation.
You're not wrong, though.
So we also have Serena, who it says she has
Plays
a cruel
tennis.
heart. She kicks you with the hardened tips of her legs. It causes a wound in your physical body and your soul that never heals.
Well, she has strong legs from running around that tennis court all day.
Oh, yeah, definitely, I guess.
Why haven't they gotten like the 9-inch nails to just use the musical score for all of Pokemon now?
Oh, don't forget now we have Grievard.
Oh, yeah.
The new puppy Pokemon, which is absolutely adorable.
I
It
know.
runs around and it falls in love with you the second you show it affection, and then it inadvertently sucks out your life force the longer you play with it.
Yeah.
I did not
It
know
is
that
very
last part.
cute. It is very, very cute.
It's so cute. I would give that dog my soul.
That's how that's how pets work. So
Well, it's your life force. It's not your soul. So those are potentially different things.
I would give it
suppose.
both. It's a dog.
We have Yveltal, who, when its life comes to an end, it sucks the life force out of every living thing and becomes a cocoon. Every living thing.
Wait, when it dies, it kills everything else in the world?
Yes.
Yep.
Doomsday Pokemon, essentially.
I don't want to live in the Pokemon world.
Yeah.
Like this,
Okay, but also it's very hard for Pokemon to actually die, and especially Yveltal is a legendary,
Yeah.
so it's not going to die easily.
I don't care if the one dies. Like that's like saying like there's a nuclear bomb in Wyoming and it could go off.
feel like-
that's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about every other Pokemon that's out there trying to like suck my soul through a gash that it's going to make by kicking me in the head. Like that's the danger I fear.
Yeah.
It's not the apocalypse Pokemon.
I feel like-
I'm fine with the existence of apocalypse Pokemon. I'm not okay with every other Pokemon hiding in the beach, hiding in the forest, hiding like in like the cracks in the walls or wherever, and they're all out there to like not just kill me, but to devour my very soul.
Is Lovecraft just like mandatory reading at Game Freak or something?
Lovecraft is still alive, and he is creating Pokemon.
Lovecraft turned into a Ghastly.
A very racist Ghastly. I'm thinking they now have like all those weird animes that are titled like something like I died and got reincarnated as a slime, and now I'm thinking it's like there needs to be like a Pokemon story. It's like I had a nice and awesome family, and then I died early, and then I became a ghost, and now I'm a 10-year-old's pet.
I mean,
The new take on Pokemon Mystery Dungeon.
The twist that 10-year-old is their son's bully. Like,
does Meowth have like a dark background?
yes.
I mean, the Meowth we all know and love has a sad background,
No,
but
I know that one.
To a isn't it like tied to like a mob of Pokemon, like a Pokemon mafia or something?
well, Team Rocket is
Vaguely
really the
remember
mafia.
No, I know, but I feel like they were tied, like even without Team Rocket, like he came from like a mafia background, but it was a mafia just of Pokemon.
No, he lived on the streets by himself, and he fell in love with
Okay.
another Meowth, and he taught himself to speak human in order to impress her, and then she was not impressed.
So it's like a sad noir movie with a talking cat.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So that's one of the episodes of the show I've actually watched. So I actually know that episode and know that story. All right. OJ, anything else?
No, that's that. That's Pokemon that are very, very creepy and tragic, part 2.
Game Freak gave
Happy
your
Halloween.
childhood, ruined it, and now OJ's reporting it to you.
All right. So this week I haven't played a whole lot new. I've been playing some older games, but the one new thing I did play was Marvel Snap. So Marvel Snap is their new mobile game, which I had zero interest in until this week. And suddenly everyone I was reading on Twitter was playing Marvel Snap and was talking about it and was raving about how good it was.
Wait, is it Snap like Pokemon Snap or Snap like Thanos Snap?
Neither, which is very weird.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I would assume like because of the MCU and that's referred to it as the Snap, right? Like that it would tie into that in some way. It doesn't at all, as far as I can tell. So there's a snap mechanic in the game. So that's where the name comes from. But anyways, so Marvel Snap is a card battling game. I don't play a lot of card battling games, so I don't have a really good comparison to make to it, but it is like different cards have different values, but then they also have special properties. So, I mean, it's very much like, Magic the Gathering or something of that nature. But then you have 3 spots that you can lay down cards, and those spots randomly have different attributes attached to them. So, like one of them may be, you have 6 rounds that you play, and it may be like after round 5, your hand swaps with the opponent's hand. Or it might be that, after round 3, you can't lay down any more cards on this spot. So there's like some strategy involved with it and everything in that. And then the cards themselves are the different, Marvel heroes and villains. So you are collecting, things like Wolverine and Spider-Man, but like they have already gone just really into the obscure with some of the characters, which is fun, I think, right? Like, I know that some people only care about those main characters, but if this was just Spider-Man and Wolverine and the Incredible Hulk, I actually think it would be a whole lot less interesting. So I think it's far more interesting that they're getting into some of the, at least to me, somebody who's not a diehard comic book fan or reader, right? That there are characters that I'm just not familiar with that I'm getting a card of and everything. I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. That's kind of cool. And so you can build your own deck and everything out of the cards that you collect. And, again, they'll have like an action cost to them. So like, usually from 1 to 6 and then they have different values and then they have different properties and the properties are interesting. So sometimes it'll be something like, if you laid this card down here, then if you don't lay a card in this area the next round, the value of this card will double. So like it's worth 4 now, but if you don't lay another card in this same pile in the next round, then it'll be worth 8.
It's Jessica Jones.
Yeah, is it Jessica Jones? I forgot who it was. Yeah, so obviously you have also been playing this game a little bit. So yeah, and then, but look, I think what makes this game, so the games go really fast, and it starts you off, without telling you, it starts you off playing against bots. So like right from the beginning, you're just winning all the time. And then slowly it starts to have you play against actual other real people. And you can kind of tell, it doesn't even tell you when that switch happens, but you can tell because the real people start playing the game very differently than the bots do. Much more aggressive, much more like you can tell like people have strategies or they have no strategy and they'll just do something crazy. And then, I think one of the things that so it's very much one of those free-to-play games, but this game never feels like you need to put any money into it. So I've been playing off and on all week. I'm up to level 14 or so, I think now, and I haven't put a dime into this game, and I haven't felt at any time any pressure to put money into this game. And I'm sure I'll get there at some point, but like right now, like I haven't felt any of that pressure. And you're like constantly upgrading, you're constantly getting new stuff. So like your cards, you can upgrade twice. So the first version of the card you get is just kind of this cool, like, piece of art and everything of the character. Then you can upgrade it so that it is a frame breaker version. And it sort of like breaks outside of the frame of a card. And they just do it super well because when you upgrade it, it goes frame breaker. And you're just like, okay, cool. And then you can upgrade it to a 3D version. And the 3D works remarkably well. Like they're playing around with like the parallax, and everything. And it like works really well. It looks 3D. It looks like it's coming out of your screen really well. And it even like replicates well on camera and everything when you do it. I was actually seeing here if I could like pull up one of mine that is 3D. I don't know. Here. Yeah. So I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's pretty neat. Yeah.
So
for all those listening, go Google image it if you don't have the game.
Yeah, so it just works really well. And you don't ever, you're constantly upgrading things. You're constantly getting something new. You're constantly feel like you're making progression. Even if you're not winning every round, you still feel like you are making progression towards getting something new. It's just an extremely well-made game. It's like one of the best made mobile games I've played in a really long time, where I played it and I'm just like, yeah, I just want to keep playing this. It has that same sort of stickiness as Clash of Clans or Clash Royale had when they first launched. But like this doesn't have any of the negative drawbacks that Clash Royale did. So like when you play, you're not actually communicating with other players. So there's none of that like taunting of the other player or anything. so far, and again, I'm very low ranked at the moment, I haven't ever felt like I was completely outclassed. Like sometimes somebody beats me and I go, oh, okay, well, they did something smart there. But I never feel like, well, I just can't compete. Like, I need to pump money into this or anything. So even upgrading your cards just upgrades the visuals of the cards. It doesn't actually make the cards do anything different. So, you're like it'll tell you this is a rare version of Medusa. That was the card I just showed you. But it doesn't actually make her do anything different. There are variants of the cards, so different artwork. So like they have like very like sort of kind of chibi cartoonish versions and everything of some of the cards. And, you can imagine them getting like the MCU version of some of the characters into this. I mean, there's lots of different ways they could potentially go with this and really kind of play around with it. But yeah, just a fantastic game. One I would recommend to anybody who has any interest in Marvel or card battling games or just something, just looking for something to distract you for a few minutes while you're on the bus, you're, in the bathroom or whatever, like you need something to do. This game works really well for that. And, you can pick it up and play it for a couple of minutes and then move on. OJ, you obviously been playing it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Oh, I really, really love this game. And I wanted to say there's a level past 3D for the cards, too.
Oh, okay.
It's animated, it's a very light animation in, like, the background. So I'm showing Hawkeye here, and then so in the background there's flames that are kind of, like, moving in the background.
Oh, nice.
And so that's pretty awesome. And then I really enjoy the different... Like I said, there's people that I've never heard of before on here, which, like I said, I'm not really super big into the comics either. Most of the MCU stuff that I know is from like television and movies. There's a lot of different people there, and it was I was confused at first when you were talking about where you're playing against bots and then it slowly moves to people because I was winning so much and I was like, there's no way that I'm this good just starting off. Like, this can't happen. But I really think it's different from any card game I've ever played. I don't know. It might be one that it's copying, but I think it's really different than any card game I've ever played. It's really, really, really fun to play. And so I really just think everyone should pick it up and try it at least once.
I'm very interested because, like, my family are huge comic book people. We have a comic book room. My dad owns every single Avengers as a comic, not just in graphic novels, but the actual comic.
Oh, wow.
He's only missing like 7 issues of various Thor comics. So I'm really interested to text him about this, and I don't know if he'll get hooked or not, but if he does, I guarantee you he will be the person who's like, I know that one, and I know that one, and I know what artist did that, and I know what comic that person started in. And
So let's test you, Alicia.
Oh, don't test me. I'm a DC gal.
Oh, do you know who Khazar is?
The name sounds familiar. I don't... Oh, yeah.
Fiery Conan man.
Yeah.
Little Tarzan-esque.
Yeah, I mean, but it's, if you are a Marvel fan and you're worried, if you're an MCU fan, right, and you're worried that, okay, there's obscure characters, am I getting the main ones? Like, I have Ant-Man and the Hulk and Odin and Abomination, and, so you are getting some of those that have been introduced in the movies, obviously, but it's fun to get some of those lesser-known characters and everything. It's just it's a really good game. I think it is the sort of game, I don't know how much your dad plays games, but it's simple enough to pick up and play.
Well, and I think he'll actually really enjoy the strategy part, I think, because like my dad does Kokoro puzzles to wind his brain down at night.
Yeah.
So I think he'll enjoy it, as long as we actually get him started on it.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say about it is it does have some of those free-to-play mechanics and the trappings of it and everything. So, like, you can buy gold to, like, upgrade and those sorts of things. But one of the problems I have with a lot of free-to-play mobile games is just getting started. The first time you load it up and you're just like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. I have no idea where anything is or what any of these menus mean or anything. And this game is simple enough that there might be a couple of things that you have to kind of dig for, but like most of the stuff is right there on the home screen. It's clearly labeled. It kind of guides you to click through each of them, at the beginning when you're first starting to play. And then once you've figured it out, it just, you don't need any more help, and they're not making it super complicated. And I hope they keep that simplicity, because I think that's part of the brilliance of it, that anyone can really pick this up and play it. Some of those mobile games, I swear, I've been playing video games all my life, and I get into them and I go, I have no idea where I'm supposed to go or what I'm supposed to do or how to play this game. This one, I did not have that problem at all. And I think that's, again, part of why it's taking off with people. It is on mobile. It's also on Steam. So it does seem like there's a variety of places you can play this if you're interested. So yeah, that was it for me for this week. All right, let's move into the news. So we have a follow-up. Last week we talked a bit about the whole Helena Taylor controversy with Bayonetta. That seems to have mostly come to a close now. Helena Taylor did take back some of her comments, and did so after it came out that some of her comments were, we'll say, misleading at best. And I don't want to say that she was lying. I think maybe she wasn't giving the full picture of the story and everything. So what we have found out is that she was paid $3,000 for the first Bayonetta, and she was offered $10,000 for this one. The $4,000 offer that she initially reported was after she had turned down doing the voice, and they came back to her later and were going to offer her to come in and do a few lines, I guess as a different character or something, and they offered her $4,000 in that capacity. So $10,000, right, still isn't a huge amount of money, and more than Helena Taylor, and more of, I think a lot of the sort of discourse on this has gotten bogged down into whether she was lying or telling the truth and everything. But I think the bigger story here is even $10,000 for the third game in a multi-million copy selling franchise. $10,000 still seems like a pretty low payday.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're not talking about any residuals or anything, you do voice work for an animated TV show, you get residuals, you get royalties from that and everything. This is just a one-time payment. That still seems like a really low payment, and I think that's been the big issue with this, is that it's shined a light on how little a lot of these voice actors are getting paid to do these games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really disappointing because I look at this and my sister is wants to be a voice actress, is working on breaking into that, and her dream would be voicing video games. And I look at this and I'm just like, well, crap. That's, like you said, that $10,000 one-time payment, that it sounds like a lot of money as a broke graduate student, but like you said, without royalties, without residuals, I can see why she wouldn't, without the context, if she just said, oh, I got offered $10,000, I could see backlash from people who didn't understand the context, being like, oh, well, $10,000, broke grad students like me are like, $10,000 is a lot of money, but you got to look at the whole picture.
Fully employed professors like me are like, $10,000, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, but I mean, we talked about this on the show last week. $10,000, yes, but that you're not taking into account, that's no benefits.
Yeah.
So that's no
benefits. How much gets taken out for taxes?
Right.
Because she's not Turnip Boy.
Yeah. She is probably paying an agent or manager of some kind. And then she doesn't know when she'll get her next job. Right? If you're Jennifer Hell, if you're Nolan North, right? If you're these top tier, of which there's a very small tier of those people, right? Like there's just a handful of those actors that are kind of turning up in most of the big games. Like I'm sure they're doing fairly well for themselves financially. I mean, Nolan North got to actually appear in the Uncharted movie, so like he's, I'm sure he's doing okay for himself. But that's not the vast majority of voice actors in the industry. And so the vast majority of voice actors, I think, are much more kind of in the Helena Taylor situation. So, I mean, I think that's been the value of this. Her situation in particular, we don't really have to dwell on that. One of the side effects of this, though, was that people have come out and talked about just general pay in the video game industry. And there was a post that came out talking specifically about developers in Japan, which was, I think, trying to shed some light on why the pay was so low. And the point being that developers in Japan get paid very low compared to what they do in the U.S. and I think what most people would assume they're getting paid. So now this isn't true of everyone at every company. It's going to be higher. Companies like Nintendo are probably paying a little bit higher. But this was saying that for game producers that they were making 6.8 million yen, which translates into about, converts into about 45,000 in US dollars. Directors, 41,000, engineers, 38,000, artists, 37,000, designers, 37, and then game testers and debuggers, 30,000. Most of those jobs outside the game testers and debuggers, which that actually might be high compared to the U.S. pay for those jobs, but most of those other jobs are probably easily half of what they would make in the U.S. Most of those jobs are paying high 5 figures, low 6 figures. This does not include things like bonuses. So a lot of the game industry now is driven by bonuses. You sell enough copies or you get a high enough rating, you get a bonus, you get a share of the profits of a game. So it doesn't include that. Japan, my understanding, is just a culture that generally pays less in salary than the U.S. does. So this, while it seems kind of shockingly low to us, my understanding is that all positions in Japan generally pay less than they do in the U.S. So, and that also ties into, like, I think some of the, public services offered in Japan and everything. But, all of this, I think, kind of gets to the point of giving us a better context for what people are actually getting paid in the video game industry. And that I think one of the false assumptions is that working in video games is a way to get rich. And for the vast majority of people, it is not at all a way to get rich.
No.
Let's see. Black Adam is joining MultiVersus, along with them adding an arcade mode. Those are coming in the next month, I believe. Age of Empires 2 and 4 are both coming to Xbox. So these have traditionally been PC-only games, but Age of Empires 2 is coming January 31st, and then Age of Empires 4 is coming sometime in 2023. And these are really interesting to me because I just can't imagine playing Age of Empires 2 on an Xbox. It's a very PC game to me. Along those same lines, Age of Mythology is getting a remake or maybe just a remaster. I'm not sure their exact terminology, how they're viewing this, but it's going to be titled Age of Mythology Retold, which is a pretty clever title. I like that title.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Somebody
Age-
needs a raise for that.
If you're not familiar with Age of Mythology, it's kind of the same style of the Age of Empire games, except obviously during Greek mythological times. So you have, mythological creatures that you're battling and that you can use and everything in your battles. I really like Age of Mythology quite a bit. All the Age of Empire and Mythology games are really good games, but Age of Mythology, I think I got more into that. I liked the Greek myths and everything being integrated into it. The Garbage Pail Kids game, we talked about that a few weeks ago. I think that might have been the last time, Alicia, you were on the show.
Yeah.
But it has now been officially released. I meant to get around to playing that this week. I did not, but that's kind of exciting.
Next week.
Yeah, that part of my weekend plans, as sad as that sounds, to play a Garbage Pail Kids video game.
Love it.
Our plans pale in comparison.
No, you don't get a high five for that one.
I was proud.
I'm not going to feel bad when OJ beats you up today.
I just said I'm going to get beat up in the parking lot for that.
Yeah. That was actually pretty good in the moment, but also just, terribly bad.
It was garbage, I guess you could say.
No. Bad.
I'm just kidding.
Okay,
Alicia-
you get a high five for fitting both of them in.
I'm just kidding.
Alicia, do you have a spray bottle? Like a cat? Can you just spray him when he does that? Let's see. Candy Creeps. Digital Eclipse. Digital Eclipse, who makes a lot of these kind of classic collections of games. So recently did the Ninja Turtles collection, but in the past they've done at least the first Mega Man collection and lots of these other collections of old games and everything. Their sort of specialty is almost like a Criterion collection sort of treatment to these old collections. And they are getting into making their own original games now, something that they're calling Digital Eclipse Arcade. And they have released their first game, which is called Candy Creeps. You can get that game entirely free until Halloween by signing up for their email newsletter. I have gotten this. I have not had a chance to play it yet, but I'm very excited to get this. Yeah, like sign up for that newsletter, get a free game. They're going to be releasing a series of these. Candy Creeps is very much in the style of kind of old arcade style games, something that you might have played in the 80s in an arcade. And just looks cool, looks fun. They say it is coming to additional platforms but it will be after Halloween. They didn't have enough time to get it onto other platforms before Halloween. But you can get it free until Halloween. Sony is developing new teams to work with Naughty Dog on AAA games, or a specific team to work on a new AAA game with Naughty Dog. What do you think Sony and Naughty Dog are developing a whole new team to work on? Is this going to be a new Uncharted game, a remake of an Uncharted game? Is this going to be, let's see, what is it? Not Ratchet and Clank.
Crash Bandicoot.
Right, but they don't have the license to that anymore.
That's right.
Activision has that. They did work on, you're right, they did work on the original Crash trilogy. What am I thinking?
Last of Us is Naughty Dog, isn't it?
Yeah. But
Was Jack and Daxter?
Jack and Daxter, that's what I was trying to think of. Jack and Daxter. Is it going to be a new Jack and Daxter game? What do you think they're getting a whole new team to work on? You wouldn't think it would be whatever they view as their main team going forward, right? Like seems like this would be a side project or revitalizing an old franchise or something.
I feel like Jack and Daxter would be a fun one. Like I think we have seen in recent years, with Crash Bandicoot coming back, as long as it's been since Sly Cooper 4, we still did get that coming back after about a decade.
Sure.
And Jack and Daxter is kind of in that same era and very much associated with those games for me. So I don't know if I expect that they're doing a Jack and Daxter game, but I think it would be fun if they were.
Yeah, and I think there's been sort of a revitalization of those style of games in the last few years, of those platformers, 3D platformers, and
like we had the Spyro Reignited trilogy.
Sure, and the Crash trilogy, and
Yep.
both of those, my understanding, sold extremely well. Those were very popular. So, yeah, it would make sense to do that. My money is probably something to do with Uncharted, but, that's probably the most boring answer, and I love the Uncharted games. I just think it's the more boring answer for that. Let's see. The original Witcher is getting a Unreal Engine 5 remake. So, OJ, I think we talked about this at one point. You expressed interest in going back and playing those original Witcher games.
Yeah, well, I didn't play them, actually. I got into The Witcher from the show, and now I'd like to go back and play them. So I think this is fantastic because it's hard to get and play.
Yeah, and my understanding is that those games are pretty hard to go back to now for some technical reasons. So,
yeah, so very excited that this is getting a remake.
They had mentioned earlier, and I think we talked about it on the show, that they were working on multiple projects. They didn't elaborate. So this was apparently one of those projects they were working on. So it is a full remake of the original Witcher using Unreal Engine 5. Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, has come out and warned that Xbox prices are set to increase after Christmas. So Phil had previously said we're not raising our prices when Sony raised the price of the PlayStation 5. He is now saying, yeah, we're probably going to raise those. So I have a quote here. We held prices on our console. We've held prices on games and our subscription. I don't think we'll be able to do that forever. I do think at some point we'll have to raise some prices on certain things. And then he later noted that after Christmas, he thought that might be the time period. So what do you think? Do you think January 1st we see price increases across Xbox? Like as soon as we get
December 26th.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's understandable. You know, it's a bummer, and I say that being a PlayStation person, not an Xbox person. Like, it's always a bummer to see prices go up, but it's understandable, like, to be competitive, and you have to.
I mean, they have held off on raising the prices of their first-party games to $70. So Sony did that when we moved to the PlayStation 5. Xbox did not do that in moving to the Series S and X. They held at $60. I think that price increase makes a whole lot of sense. I don't think that would be shocking to anyone. I think if it's a increase in the cost of the actual console, that still is shocking to me. It's still shocking that Sony did it. It would be shocking to me if Xbox did that, just because that's sort of unprecedented. It's only within the last year, and I know inflation is a problem, but like still, like in my lifetime, I can't remember a console ever going up in price after getting released. Like consoles go down in price, and we've seen that with the Meta Quest 2. We've seen that now with the PlayStation 5, at least outside the U.S., and now Xbox seems to be hinting that they might go in that direction. And, you know, it just seems kind of shocking. Usually when they do a price increase, they do it more stealthy. So they do something like what Nintendo has done, where, yeah, you can still buy a Switch, and technically the Switch is still $300, but like now you can only generally find it with a game packed in. So you're spending $350 or $360 to buy it. Right. And so that's a price increase, but it's a stealth price increase.
Yeah.
Where the price increases we've seen so far have not been stealth at all. They've just been out in the open. So I wonder if Xbox will try to handle that, you know, disguise it a little bit better. They did announce that Xbox Game Pass is now profitable. There's a typo there. It says not profitable. It should be now profitable. That has been something they have not publicly stated before. So their subscription service is actually now turning a profit for them. They're not losing money on it anymore. But they do not see it becoming more than potentially 15% of their market. I think that's, you know, close to where it is now. They don't really see it growing much more than that. And the reason I think that's interesting is when they came out with this, people were panicked that soon the Xbox was just going to be a subscription-only model. This seems to say that they're keenly aware this will never be their primary model. Like Game Pass will never be the way that Xbox runs as a business entirely, right? That for whatever reason, a big majority of the market still wants to buy games individually, and they don't want to do it via subscription. So I don't know. How do you feel about this? Like, I know OJ, you have jumped on the subscription bandwagon on the PlayStation. Alicia, Ryan, I don't know how you feel about going subscription or buying games individually. If the Switch offered a subscription model, would you be tempted to go that way?
I would be tempted. I mean, I think it depends on like the price of the subscription, and like what all games I'm seeing being offered on it. But like as long as it's a good deal, I'd definitely be tempted to it. I do prefer having my own games, like just buying it and then like having it. I think especially like in the age of streaming, I have a nervousness about just streaming things because one of the, like, I love streaming how it gives access to everything immediately, but something I've seen with like films and television is if you just stream something, but then it's no longer like being offered on streaming platforms and there's no like easily available physical copy, you're just kind of screwed. Because I know that recently there's been a lot of flack that HBO has gotten because like Discovery bought them, and some shows like that were on there just all of a sudden got taken off. Some cancellations happened like fairly immediately. I know Infinity. Well, I don't know. I think these were canceled before, but like Infinity Train was a show that a lot of people loved. I still haven't watched it, but it was taken off. I think you can still buy it through like either Apple or Amazon, but it's not there in their streaming anymore. And a show I was really enjoying called Close Enough. I was one day, like, I'll just put that in as background noise for now. I haven't had that on in a while. And I was like, wait, where is this? Why can't I find this? And then I found out that not only was it canceled a few months ago and I hadn't realized that, it was just taken off, like, I guess as part of Discovery's deal, like buying it, it's no longer on there. And I'm thinking about back when, like, Evangelion was hard to get for, and granted that wasn't even streaming that wasn't streaming, that wasn't a physical copy, and then like I had it on Netflix, but there was still that nervousness because I just had the old DVDs, and I was so happy when I could finally get the Blu-rays. So I'm thinking of like from the perspective of movies and television and the nervousness of when something's no longer available for streaming, you can't get a copy of it anymore.
Right.
But that said, I like the immediate access. I like the ability to like try out things for subscription that might not be as easy through if I just buy it and then like, well, damn, there's $50 spent for one thing I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I'm for it. I still prefer having my own copies of stuff, but I think it's ultimately good for access.
All right. Yeah. I think those are valid concerns. Right? Like as somebody who uses Game Pass, like it's fantastic for like sampling a lot of different games that I just wouldn't have the money and I wouldn't spend the money to try even on discount or on sale.
Right.
But it's also that kind of worry of, what if they raise the price and it becomes too much and I want to cancel this, then do I end up with no games? Where I definitely would have bought some more along the way if I didn't have the subscription.
Right.
And maybe that's not a concern because a lot of those games I'll never go back and play. But there's a lot of games on Steam that I bought 10 years ago that I still play occasionally. So I think those are completely valid. Let's see, the Callisto Protocol. So this is the former Dead Space team, or some of the former Dead Space team, making a spiritual successor to the Dead Space franchise before they decide to reboot the Dead Space franchise and remake the first one. But anyways, these are some of those developers. They have canceled the Callisto Protocol in Japan, just in Japan for right now. This doesn't sound like it'll affect it anywhere else, but basically they can't get a rating for that game without making significant cuts that they feel like would harm the game overall. I was not aware of this about Japan. Japan has a ratings organization called CERO, CERO. It's an acronym. I don't know what it stands for exactly. But basically, they censor games for nudity and violence. In the past, they have censored The Last of Us, Cyberpunk, Uncharted, Witcher 3, Grand Theft Auto 5, and others. this group was apparently founded in the early 2000s, so this is not something that Japan has always had, but since they have been founded, this is apparently a very common practice that games get censored in Japan. And, in this case, the Callisto Protocol team is an indie team. This is not, coming from Electronic Arts or some big publisher. And for that reason, they don't feel like they have the time or the resources, or maybe it would just hurt the game so much from their perspective. They can't make the requisite cuts. And so they're just canceling the game entirely in Japan, which is a big bummer for Japanese players interested in this. They have apparently also commonly, censored Japanese developed games. So this is not just targeted towards Western developers. They have also done this with the Resident Evil and other franchises. So
this is really interesting because I feel like we always hear about games that originated in Japan or anime or anything like that originated in Japan and then being censored for the U.S. release. So it's really interesting to see it going back the other way.
It's a weird setup, and I know like Japan itself has actually like is a pretty conservative country, but that back and forth is just strange to me. It's like, I don't know what to add really. Just agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I think this does sort of go against our preconceived notions. So like when I was a kid, video games got censored in the U.S., right? So if you go back and you play role-playing games on the NES or Super Nintendo, a lot of those games, for example, like you would go to heal in a church, but when they brought the game to the U.S., they had to get rid of that, right? Because Nintendo of America wanted nothing to do with religion in their games. Not because they're anti-religion, but because they were just worried they were going to step on people's toes if there was anything about religion. So there's a lot of NES games. One of Miyamoto's earliest games is, I can't remember the name of that game, but like it involves like the devil, and like that game just never got released in the U.S. And and so there's things like Final Fantasy IV in Japan has nudity in it. Very small pixelated nudity, but it has nudity in it. And when it came to the U.S., they just cut that out entirely. So like it is sort of against our preconceived ideas. Now all those games, right, released before the early 2000s. So that apparently they were more lax back then. This has been a more recent development. But then when you think about anime, right? Like anime we think of as being highly sexualized in a way that American animation isn't. Outside of something like Harley Quinn, an adult-oriented cartoon. But we would never think...
Like Sailor Moon.
Yeah, yeah.
You get lower shots in the Japanese version than you do in the U.S. version. And we have the infamous cousins of... Sailor Neptune and Sailor Uranus are lesbians and in a romantic relationship in Japan, and the original English dub made them cousins.
Which, made it totally wholesome.
Yeah, didn't remove any of the romantic overtones from the animation or any of that, but they're cousins now.
Well, you have to understand, it was translated in Kentucky. So I can make that joke. I'm from Kentucky.
Yeah, but it's so interesting. And even thinking about just like not even censoring nudity and violence, but thinking about, the Pokemon games, the fishermen have cigarettes in Japan, or like the female swimmer characters have shorter or smaller swimsuits, and it's just fascinating.
One part of me wonders is, and I don't feel like I'm informed enough to like say for sure, but just this is a question on my mind. I wonder if it's also due to how stylized anime is versus how realistic some of the games that are being censored here look. I wonder if that's the difference for them, because Last of Us, anime itself is a super varied style. So I don't want to like pigeonhole all of it, but Last of Us looks like a lot more realistic than say a lot of anime does in terms of its style. Like it's made to more emulate more exactly like what people look like and such. So I wonder if that has something to do with it.
That could be.
I mean, that's the thing about like Looney Tunes. Like you could never show live action people doing the stuff that Looney Tunes characters get away with,
Right.
because we accept that level of violence because it's cartoon characters.
Or like Homer choking Bart in The Simpsons. If you did that in like a show with like
If Malcolm in the Middle, if Bryan Cranston choked Malcolm,
could be the mom in this situation choking somebody, but
right? Yeah, okay, fair.
or you know, if like Roseanne, Dan's like, "Come here, DJ."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. I mean, you were talking about different cartoons, so like my understanding is the original Pokemon. You know that Brock is a pervert and making perverted comments.
That didn't really change entirely.
Well, the original Pokemon anime suffered from a lot more. I mean, that was definitely one of the things, but you know, we also got jelly donuts instead of onigiri, and
I do remember seeing that something that was cut out was like there's an episode where like they're in a swimsuit competition and like James is in drag and has like very
inflatable boobs.
Yeah. And they're like showing them off like and very proud of them. And
Yeah.
You know what? Good for you, James.
Yeah, so I mean, just kind of interesting. Obviously, we censor things in America all the time. Not the government necessarily, but you know, individual companies censor things. Nintendo of America censors things. Sony, like all these companies do it. But it's always interesting, kind of getting a peek. I feel like we're getting a pretty good peek into Japan cultural differences this week.
Yeah.
Which was, you know, we often hear a lot about Japan, but we don't get that kind of insight often.
And a lot of people out there do have like at least maybe this isn't so much the case now, but when I was younger, have a pretty sensationalized idea of Japan and how like wild and wacky and weird it is and how much more sexual some things are. But in reality, Japan, like that's just the piece of it you're getting that's being sensationalized as it's being imported over here. Japan as a whole country is itself pretty conservative and like, so, you know, and there's been like a culture there of like people who are into some of like the geekier and nerdier stuff being kind of looked down upon. So it's
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember when I was in middle school, like we were. I guess I shouldn't out anybody else, but I was definitely a weeaboo. So, if you're unfamiliar with the term, a weeaboo is someone who's super obsessed with anime and manga, and like you said, that very sensationalized of like, I like anime, so I know everything about Japan. And very much, like you said, like I think that I hope that people now are less like that, but very much like that. Oh, OJ's shaking his head. Sad day. But I think Japan, you know, because of anime, because we associate a lot of video games with Japan, like that really tends to be a culture that U.S. American teens and preteens are really like, oh my gosh, I like this one type of media from Japan, so I know everything about Japan. And it's like, no, we really don't. Like, there's a lot of cultural aspects that we've talked about today, and obviously that go far beyond what we've talked about today.
And art and entertainment in Japan like extend beyond anime.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it would be very similar to, right? Sometimes when people come to the U.S. for the first time from another country, they have an expectation that's built on the movies and TV series that they have seen, right? So the expectation is that, you know, we spend all of our free time hanging out at coffee shops with each other because that's what they see in Friends or, you know, some other sitcom. And that's just obviously not reality, but like we get this mediated, you know, constructed reality that we're importing in, and we think that is what that place is like, and is a very limited, even if it does reflect a part of their culture, it's a very limited part of their culture.
Right.
And I also would say that nobody blames a 12-year-old for having a misconstrued version of another country based on cartoons they watch.
Oh, tell that to the other 12-year-olds.
I think it's more the problem is when it's people getting up into their 20s and 30s and even older who still hold on to that, that wrong view.
Yeah. No, I joke. Being a weeaboo is like being an alcoholic. You're never an ex-alcoholic. You're always a recovering alcoholic. You're always a recovering weeaboo.
Yeah, I mean, anything could tip you over the edge, such as Sonic Prime launching on Netflix December 15th.
Yay!
Merry Christmas.
Oh, this is a dark Christmas present because it's just going to be you watching Sonic.
I watched the trailer and I'm intrigued. I don't know. It feels to me like they're taking parts of Sonic X and parts of Sat AM, which could either work really well or could fall apart, which I feel is very standard for my approach to Sonic right now with Frontiers and all that. Like, it could either be really great or really bad, and I'm not quite sure yet which one it'll be.
Yeah, I think that's always true of Sonic, right? Like, we just never know. It could be the worst thing ever. It could be the end of civilization.
It didn't used to be, and then Sonic 06 happened. We used to be genuinely excited for every Sonic game, and then Sonic 06 scarred us all.
I don't think Justin feels the same way.
I think somebody might be more weeboo than they're letting on.
Whoa.
Oh, man.
Shots fired.
I guess you're always a recovering weeb.
Alicia, send your hate mail too, Justin.
I just sent her an email before we start recording this, so she can just hit reply.
This is how, behind the music, Saluki Gamescast starts. and then Justin took shots at Sonic.
Well, that's pretty true of every episode.
This is the dark history. This is like when you do dark history reflections. OJ beating Ryan up in the parking lot. Justin taking pot shots at Sonic and Pokemon, and Alicia's response.
Alicia's villain origin.
My village origin story goes so much further back than this.
In my defense, I don't think I've taken too many shots at Pokemon.
Not lately.
It's been much more geared. It's been shots at how much Pokemon you play. That's more the issue than it's just Pokemon in general.
Oh, man.
And it's more I just find it amusing. All right, that does it for news. Let's move on to our big question. Like I gotta note it, we're 3 days out from Halloween. So which game would you give away as a trick or a treat? So Ryan, why don't we start with you? If you could give away a game as a trick or a treat, which game would you give away?
My thoughts on this were actually and I haven't played the more recent ones really, but Mario Party 1 through 3, one of those, because I feel like going on so when you're going on doing the board part, rolling the dice and stuff, I feel like you can run into tricks or treats in that based on what spaces you land on, based on who you run into. You might run into a shop, you might run into a critter that needs help and you help them, and then you get something for it. It's been so long since I played those, so I don't really remember that well, but just thinking about even just landing on blue spaces and getting 3 coins, landing on red spaces and losing 3 coins. And I also thought about Mario Kart kind of in this way, because you're going through the blocks, you're getting something you can use to get to your advantage, and that's the treat. And the trick is when you use your treat on somebody else, or when somebody else's treat is used on you. So I think the Mario Party games or the Mario Kart is and if you just want to do a mean trick, give somebody Superman 64.
Oh boy, a Superman game. Maybe it has Henry Cavill in it. Oh no.
Just got a new appreciation for Zack Snyder right here.
OJ, what game would you give away as a trick or a treat?
So when I read this question, my initial thought was a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup that played Doom.
I mean, you can play Doom on anything.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
So that was my first thought. But then as I was thinking more about it, I was seeing something online, and there are people whose first introduction to the Final Fantasy series is Strangers of Paradise, which is just horrible, but also
That That's chaotic.
Yeah. I'll just give
is
chaos
sheer-
for Halloween.
That is sheer chaos.
Yeah.
I want you to come to CMST Day as chaos, and you just walk around like walking into things and knocking stuff off tables. And when somebody asks you why, you say, "I'm chaos."
This is a weird one for me, but I'm just picturing OJ dressed up as J. Jonah Jameson. Like, I want pictures of the chaos, or pictures of Strangers of Paradise.
No, Justin is J. Jonah Jameson. We want OJ as chaos.
Yeah. So and then people have
Weird segue.
You broke OJ's brain.
and other people, their first introduction was like Final Fantasy 15, which is a vast or 14, which are vastly different games than the originals.
Right.
So I would like to gently introduce people who are coming to trick or treat into like Final Fantasy 4, which would then necessarily lead into Final Fantasy 6. Because the JRPG is not as popular as it used to be, and not everybody knows about it. And people think like, oh, those older games are weird, but they haven't really played any. So I'd like to give Final Fantasy 4 as a treat to people, so then they can be introduced to the JRPG genre.
All right, and Strangers of Chaos as a trick.
Yeah, that's for the naughty kids.
It's a good name for a game.
All right, Alicia.
I feel like I'm not helping my reputation for being the cringe culture person on this podcast with this.
Oh, Alicia, we're all geeks here.
Oh, we're all geeks,
speak
but
for
I
yourself, Ryan.
feel like I'm like the pinnacle of cringe culture geek, especially after all this just outing myself as a weeb. But I feel like my answer to this has to be Undertale, because you get the trick part with you can make it as scary as you want it to be with genocide, and there's even scary parts in neutral or pacifist with like Omega Flowey and stuff like that. But then you get the treat in that you can play through without killing anybody and just having a good time and getting to know everyone in that world.
I think that's a good answer.
I do just want to say, though, about outing yourself as a weeb. Alicia, do you know who you're talking to right now? I'm not saying I'm more of a weeb. I'm just saying I can relate.
I mean, he is doing his dissertation on animation.
That's true.
And there is a chapter talking about Steven Universe in relation to, like, anime. So
That's true.
Yeah,
But did you ever go around writing your name in Japanese on your homework and telling your teachers that that was what we were supposed to do?
no, that's not something I did. But
That's how bad I was. I was going to marry England from Italia.
I do like that Alicia's concerned about being outed.
Oh, no, I know I'm outing
every
myself.
few seconds, she just outs herself more and more.
The whole reason I'm here at SIU is because I outed myself as a weeb as an undergrad.
that took a weird turn, too, because at first it's like, I'm embarrassed by this. It's like, oh, you think you're as much of a weeb as me? Oh, no, let me tell you what I did. Like,
Oh, no, I'm not embarrassed. I just laugh at myself.
Next week, we're going to have to take a picture because Ryan and Alicia are going to be trying to out-weeb each other, and they're going to have full-on cosplay makeup.
They'll come in with jackets on that have like 50 buckles on them. And everything.
I just want you to know, Alicia, I got an Evangelion figure from Japan in my office right now. So I bought it in Japan. So
This has taken an interesting turn. I feel like OJ and I can just do commentary as the two of you try to out geek each other. Oh yeah, well my first girlfriend was a Tamagotchi.
okay, maybe that should be the title.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I think Undertale, that would be fun, right? Like, and I think you're right, because it can be played multiple different ways. It can be both kind of a trick and a treat. That's a pretty good answer. And the only people who are really bad about Undertale are the people who just can't shut up about it or won't shut up about it. And you're like, you can play other games. It's okay.
Other games do exist. Like Deltarune.
Okay, that's pretty good. So for myself, I wrote down 2 answers, and I kind of picked a theme for this. So I picked fast food games. So my treat would be Yo Noid. Yo Noid is a NES game where you play as the Noid from Domino's advertising campaigns.
Oh my gosh.
So, wow, the two of you may actually be too young to remember the Noid.
You just unlocked a childhood memory.
So for those listening who may not know the Noid was a little cartoon character who supposedly ruined people's pizzas, and they did little animated segments of him and everything, and the tagline was "Avoid the Noid," and this was for several years Domino's big advertising campaign, and they actually made a video game. It was a reskinned video game. It was a ninja game, I believe, in Japan, and when they brought it to the U.S., they just reskinned it with the character of the Noid. And
that's almost as bad as turning onigiri into jelly donuts.
I remember enjoying that game a lot, though.
Yeah, well, it's pretty fun.
Yeah,
it's like not a bad game.
Now I want pizza.
Well, I was thinking about pizza because it's Friday, so that's why it came to mind. And so it's a pretty good game. I think it's actually kind of a treat if you want to play a licensed video game. The other example you could give with that would be something like Cool Spot, which was the 7-Up game. But if we're going to go with a trick, then it would have to be Sneak King, the Burger King video game. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but Burger King actually sold these games. They were Xbox 360 games. There's 3 of them. And you could go to Burger King and buy a copy of these games. I actually have all 3 of the Burger King video games.
What?
Yeah, you'd buy them through the drive-thru and everything. I think actually my sister bought them for me because I couldn't get to a Burger King, and she was like, I'll just stop by and buy them, and you pay me back.
Justin just has like a wall full of like Burger King memorabilia.
I am the biggest Burger King weeb. But one of them was a kart racing game. There's Sneak King, and I forget what the third game is. But anyway, Sneak King is the best of the games. It's also the worst. And it's a sort of like it's a stealth game where you're like sneaking around and surprising people with Burger King food, and you're playing as the Burger King King, which was their mascot for a while. So it's a guy dressed up in a giant king costume and giant king head.
Responsible
and
for many nightmares.
Yep.
Yeah. And so these are games based around that character and everything, and they're interesting and they're kind of goofy and fun, but they're actually not very good games. And so that would be my trick, because somebody might actually get that and be excited. I got a new Xbox game, and no, I'm sorry, it's a bad video game. And it's not even as funny or as goofy as you'd kind of want it to be and everything. So kind of interesting, but very much a trick. All right, that does it for this week. That I think covers everything we had to talk about. Thank you again, OJ, Alicia, and Ryan, for joining me. Thank you for those of you out there listening. You can always check out more information going to salukigames.com, or check out this podcast wherever you get podcasts. And we will be back next week with another episode. Have a very happy Halloween, and try not to be a weeb.